Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. I'm Kevin Sully, joined by Lincoln Shrike, and on the show today we have Christian Coleman, who it was announced this morning facing a suspension from the Athletics Integrity Unit. Christian, thank you for joining us. You detailed on Twitter last night the circumstances of that third whereabouts failure on December the 9th. I wanted just to start there and move forward. Can you tell me what the process has been for you over those past 6 months from December 9th to where we are now?
So basically, we just been sending emails back and forth with what I assume is the AIU's lawyer or representative or whoever. So December 10th, they sent me a notification in the morning. I got the email while I was eating breakfast, and I was like just totally caught off guard. I called my agent, and that's when I wanted to get on Twitter and just let people know that, like, what's going on, like, what is this? I'm available for testing like every day, at all times. Um, and I was just confused, man. It was disheartening because I knew that would be like the third time, and it would just be something huge. And so my agent was like, we'll go through the proper protocols. We'll send back a letter to them, let them know the situation, and that's what we were doing. You have a chance to dispute it. And so the past 6 months, we just been like letting them know all the information that they requested. Then they would send me back an email like a month later, and then ask me for like receipts from Chipotle. And then we'll send it to them, and then like 2 months later, they'll send me back an email like requesting something that I bought at Walmart, and requesting like my bank receipts, and requesting my card that I purchased it with, asking me like did I have like video footage of me coming in and out of my apartment? I'm like, it's just an apartment. Like I don't live at a bank or something like that. Like we don't have like an official record. Um,
Mhm.
and so we were just going back and forth with them, like sending them all the information we could. And so my thinking was, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they're getting all this information so that they know that like I wasn't trying to avoid anything. Like I was in the city. If you had called me, I could have taken the test and moved on about my night. And so that's what I'm thinking, that like they're getting all this information so that they can like drop this and move forward. Like I've been tested like 5, 6, 7 times since then. So it's like that was my thinking. And then last week they sent us back the final email, was like they had enough information for them to go ahead and count it as a missed test. And that's when I was like, I put together what I wanted to put together in terms of letting the public know what the situation was. And um that's just kind of like how it's been. It's definitely been a stressful situation. Like the past 6 months, hanging this over my head. Will respond, and then I'm going to practice, thinking about this every day. Um, and then like they'll not respond until like 2 months later, and then send me something and request like some petty information. It's been a crazy process, and it's one of them situations where like I don't think any other sports league has to deal with anything like this. I feel like the NFL has Roger Goodell, and like when a situation happens, he'll talk to the athlete. He'll talk to, like, let's say somebody gets arrested. He'll talk to the athlete, talk to whoever he needs to make a decision and move forward. Like the same thing with Adam Silver in the NBA. And it's like I don't even know who I'm talking to, or like what the process is, or like what's going on. I'm just in the wind, and then like they put out information and like just throw me out to the wolves so that disheartening, man, and it takes a lot of joy out of the sport for me. Like I said in the letter, like I'm somebody who has been running track since I was 4 years old. So why wouldn't I want the sport to be as clean, as big, as popular as possible? Um, and it's taking a lot of joy out of it for me, man. It's disheartening. And so the past 6 months has been tough. But we just been going back and forth with them, and they came back last week and finally gave their final result. So we'll see what happens.
The information that you gave to them, that you detailed, the receipts, all of that was related to the night of September 9th. Is that correct, to try to establish where you were?
December 9th. Yep. December 9th, 2019. Yep.
And Christian, what evidence did they request that maybe you weren't able to satisfy in their eyes to why they went ahead and gave you the suspension? You mentioned the video, and then maybe you didn't have a video like they had requested. Was there something they
Mhm.
needed concrete wise that you weren't able to provide, which is why they went through with calling it a missed test?
I'm honestly not sure, man. So what happened was like, so I went to what I can remember, because remember, like I'm going through this day, like I'm just going through my regular nightly routines. It's a regular day, and so I'm not thinking that anybody's looking for me to take a test or anything like that, whatever. And so I went to Macy's. I bought a suit because the Bowerman was coming up, and I was leaving that day to go do a photo shoot in LA, and then going to the Bowerman, and then going back home for Christmas. So that was the only day I can go and run some errands, do what I had to do, whatever. So I went to Macy's, bought a suit, got my phone fixed at the Apple store, went to Chipotle, came back to the crib, and I woke up the next morning like a normal day, and I get that email. So I was just kind of confused. And when we were sending emails back and forth, they asked me for the receipt from Chipotle because that was the last stop before I came home and ate. They asked me for my receipt from Apple. They asked me for, what I paid, what the card that I paid for it with at Macy's. I don't know what more information I could have provided. They even went to the extent of they contacted some higher up in the organization in Chipotle, uh, to get like the official record of when I actually purchased something. And so I'm thinking that, like, I've provided as much information as I have from that night. Um, I don't know. Like my phone doesn't track my every move, or like it doesn't like record my GPS. It records like frequent locations. I think we even went to that extent of trying to look for there. But I don't know. We gave them all the information that we possibly could, and I was thinking that that's their line of thinking, that I'm giving them as much information to prove that I was there in the city, I was around my house, and I wasn't trying to do anything to avoid a test or anything. So I'm honestly not sure.
Uh, your the testing the hour that they were supposed to be able to test that was at that 7:15 to 8:15 window, correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's your
Yep.
window as it's defined. Were you outside of the house shopping during that window, and if so, were you home? Like, were you back at home during that window?
Yeah, so I was already out shopping before my window started. And typically, as long as you make it back home inside of your window, the tester will be there, take the test, whatever. And I did. And I felt like, well, not what I felt like. What's usually the rule is that, like, even if, let's say you miss the tester, let's say you come in the back door, they're at the front door, or anything, like, they'll call you the last 5 minutes to make sure. And that's not only to, like, protect you and give you an opportunity to take the test, but it's also, so that it's on record that they stayed there for the full hour.
Yep.
And so if you didn't call the last 5 minutes, what like was usually in the rules, and what I've talked to every DCO since that's come to test me, and they've said that that's what they usually do. I've talked to other athletes, and they said that, like, it's never been a situation where they haven't been called and given an opportunity to take a drug test. And so that's the rules under from my understanding. Not only to give us an opportunity to get back in time if you're not at home to take the test, but to also so that the DCO is protected, and people can believe that what he's saying is, like, I stayed for the full hour, and I even placed the phone call the last 5 minutes. He wasn't there. And so that wasn't done. So there's no proof that he was even there. There's no proof that he was even at my apartment. So yeah, I came back within my hour, and what I told them was that I know that I was there within my hour because I had watched the beginning of the Monday Night Football game. I ate my Chipotle. But of course, that's he say, she say. So I mean, it's not really much I can do. There's no really proof of that.
Okay, so just to clarify, in the beginning you weren't there, but you were back within the hour, and you're saying that's something that's happened to you before. That's to you not out of the ordinary that you get back within the hour and you're still able to test. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. Since I entered the testing pool in 2015, there's been times where, when I was in college, of course, when you're in college, you have more moving parts, class, and different things going on. Um, it's been times where they've like called me. I've been in class, my phone on do not disturb, and they'll call. my coach, because we had to put down a secondary contact. And so my coach is like, call me while I'm in class. And obviously, if my coach calling me, I'm gonna pick up. Um, and I've left and going to take a test, whatever. So yeah, that's typically been like the situation for me, like, and what I deem to have been the rules and the process that, like, as long as you make it back within like your 1 hour window, um, you're good to go. So I'm not sure
Y-
why this time was different.
You also mentioned on the post that the address that was listed on the form was not your correct address.
Yeah, obviously I don't want to give people my address. I would tell you what he put down and what my real address is, but I don't want, give him my address. But yeah, he like messed up the 2 or 3 words of my address, and maybe he was at the right place, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I just think that kind of just proves the lack of kiss part, and like, this is my career, man. Like, and you wrote down the wrong address, so who knows if you're even telling the truth about how long you stayed. Um, and it said on there, he also wrote down, it said, per client's instructions, do not call him. I'm assuming that the client is the IAAF or the AIU, because I'm not the client. I wouldn't tell him not to call me. And so usually the AIU, they'll hire third party testing organizations to come and test for them. Like USADA has their own DCO, their own agents. AIU doesn't, especially in the United States. So they'll hire different companies, and so like that company, the AIU, is their client. And I'm assuming that they told him not to call. So yeah, he wrote all those things down.
Yeah, the AIU, I think in their rule list it says, they sometimes instruct not to call because it can give the athlete advance notice to where tampering can be perhaps performed. But you're saying any other time you've had a phone call, so you weren't prepared for not having a phone call. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I mean, literally every other time. Literally. Obviously, it's been times where I've just been at home and like they'll knock on the door, and obviously I'll be downstairs, hear the door, open the door, and they didn't call. But anytime where it's been like, they're not sure if I heard the door, or they're not sure, or a couple minutes have gone by, or anything, or if I'm at home, or if I'm outside the window, or anything, like, I've had a phone call, I've received a phone call. So that's been my experience. That's been the experience of every other athlete that I've spoken to. Literally everybody else in the sport that is in the testing pool that I've spoken to said that that's just something that they feel like is egregious and purposeful if they told them not to call. Um, so not only is it only my experience, but I feel like everybody else's too. But obviously I can't speak for everybody, or I don't want to give out specific names or anything like that. But the people I've spoken to, they said that that's been their experience as well.
What have you been told about the length of your suspension as of now? Do you know, is it 2 years as a standard, or what exactly do you have specifically there?
I have no idea. Obviously, I think in the rule book it says 2 years. I think that would just be very egregious. I think that would be very, um, I don't know. I feel like that'll be overkill. In situations in the past, I've seen people be suspended for only a year. If that's the case, hopefully it can be a situation where it's December to December, or maybe May to
Yep.
May, or from this day to next year, and I'll still be good for the Olympics. That's what's most important, man. At the end of the day, I just want to be able to run. Like, this is my job, this is my career, this is my livelihood, this is how I make money, and so it's just like, and this. I mean, this brings me joy. Like, this is what I love to do. So obviously, I don't want to be suspended. I don't want to have to sit out. And it's something that I worked so hard for me to have this opportunity to legitimately have a shot, at making the Olympic team, and coming home with a medal. And so that's what's most important. So even if we had to work out some sort of deal, or anything, I don't know, man. Like, for me to just be suspended a year and still be available for the Olympics, I'm not sure, but I think in the rule book it says 2 years. I've never seen that done or happen, or anybody face that. So we'll see. Everything's just kind of like up in the air, and so many moving parts, and I don't know. I think that's the most crazy part to me, is that, like, it's not a set of rules or a set timeline or anything like that, like other organizations. It's just kind of like I don't even know who's making the rules or who's making the final say or anything. I have no idea.
When did you accept the provisional suspension? Was that when we found out about it? So this morning, or does that go back a month, 2 months? I'm just trying to if you are suspended, how long you would be out and how much time you would have to miss.
So, like I was saying before, how they were like messing around, like responding for like a month, not responding for 2 months, and so
Mm.
finally, my lawyer was like, we don't want to keep prolonging this and prolonging it, and then we're getting close to, like, let's say I had to be suspended a year, we're getting close to the Olympic trials, and so like a month ago he told him that we'll accept the provisional suspension and still hold our right to still appeal this and still go through the process, but you guys are taking a long time, or messing around, and we don't want to get closer and closer to when the Olympic trials will be next year. So we accepted a provisional suspension a month ago.
Okay.
And so I'm assuming if it's a year, it'll be from then. If not, I'm not sure, man. I have no idea at this point. I have no
Mm.
idea. Yeah.
Um, in your response last night, you made a comment about how your parents were saying to buy a Ring doorbell system for Christmas. Did you
Yeah.
after what happened to you in the lead up to the World Championships, what steps did you take, if any, to make sure this didn't happen again when you were sitting on two violations?
So I mean, at that point, it just comes down to me just being more diligent and focused on updating the app every day, because that was the issue. That was the problem. Like even in April, um, I was at the Drake relays, but I didn't update the app that I was there, and so I'm thinking that this. I mean, like I'm available for testing. I would love to be tested. Like I'm at Drake Relays. I know where the testing tent is. I can go over there, take a test, whatever. But obviously um that's on me. I didn't update it. And so what I've been doing is just I set an alarm on my phone every day at 8 p.m. to just remind me to update it if I'm gonna be staying somewhere else, or um if I'm not at home, remind me to get home within my window. And so, yeah, that's mainly what I've done. Just been more diligent, set an alarm on my phone to remember to um, update it every day. And obviously, I didn't have the Ring doorbell at the time. If I did, obviously, that would have alleviated this. And so I just feel like with the technology that we have nowadays, I don't see what's the purpose of saying that you can't call, because people have Ring doorbells nowadays, and so it's just like, even if you claim, oh, you don't want to call because you don't want to give people a heads up notice, well, if I have a Ring doorbell, it's gonna call me anyway. Like it's gonna come give me a notification on my phone. So that's something that I've gotten as well. So I guess those two things.
Did you see it as you were taking a risk when you went that night and you went out shopping? Did you view that as something that could come back to bite you when it happened on December 9th?
Nah, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it. Like that's why I was just completely just caught off guard December 10th. I think maybe the media and the fans, they have a misconception that like we don't have a life, or we don't have like other things going on. You know what I'm saying? Like other stuff. Like, I mean, I don't know, because that's not something that I'm thinking about. Like, oh, let me like I would understand if, like, let's say if you were a cheater, or let's say that you were purposely trying to like avoid a test, then yeah, that would be something that's on your conscience every single day. But for me, I'm not necessarily thinking about that all the time, that like the testers could be coming at this very moment or something like that. So no, I was just going through my regular day, man. I was just, going and running my errands, doing what I had to do. It did occur to me that like my 1 hour window was 7:15 to 8:15. So I was like, oh yeah, let me get back within my hour. I did. I mean, I didn't run into a DCO or a tester. So obviously, I move on with my night. I didn't think twice about it, or I didn't think anything, or even when I was running my errands, I didn't think that I was putting my career at jeopardy, because I received a phone call literally every other time I've been tested if I haven't been at home. And so, nah, I didn't look at it as me risking anything, or honestly, I didn't really think about it or think twice about it, to be honest with you.
So to be clear, you weren't aware of the, I guess, the rule that states that they don't have to call you before this. Like you thought that they had to, if they didn't get an answer at the door, they're going to call.
I was under that impression, yes.
Okay.
And I didn't know the rule, but I think something else that's kind of crazy is that, when I was telling you before that, like, they hire third party, like, testing organizations, like somebody else is the testing organization, and the AIU hires them to go in and do the testing for them. And certain organizations have different rules, and I think that's the crazy part. It's just like some organizations, like, they'll call immediately when they show up. That's just a part. Like, I've had that happen. Like, some organizations feel like we'll call the last 15 minutes. Some organizations say only the last 5 minutes. Regardless, I feel like every person that I've dealt with, in some form or fashion, in their protocol is to place a phone call, to give the athlete notice and give them an opportunity, to take the test. And so I had no idea that was the rule. Um, and I don't know, I've just dealt with so many, like, DCOs, so many testers, like, over the years, and that's just been my impression that they'll place a phone call.
Something like this happens, and I think back to last summer with your first instance with a whereabout violation. It seems like on Twitter and social media, you'll see your peers in the sport of track and field. Some will come out and obviously support you, but others will be like, I don't understand how you could be, careless, and I don't understand how you could miss 3 tests or get 3 whereabouts violations. It's not hard to follow the rules, is what some people will say on Twitter and whatnot. What do you say to those people that say, you have to either be hiding something or careless to incur a whereabouts violation that garners a suspension?
What I would say is, obviously, I'm playing by different rules. I mean, for them to blatantly put on the sheet that, per the client's instructions, I was told not to call. I think that that's pretty. I've never seen that. Nobody I've spoken to has ever seen that. Clearly, I'm playing by different rules. I think that everybody else that I've spoken to in the sport that is serious, and is ranked in the top 5 or ranked high in their events. It's been situations. Sure. It's been situations where they've, like, let's say it's the test, and then now the AIU is, like, coming after them harder and, like, sending testing, every, like, couple days. I don't know, and then nobody else is in my position. Nobody else is the 100-meter world champion. Nobody else is the favorite going into the Olympics next year. So obviously they won't be tested as many times as me. Obviously they won't receive these type of gains from the AIU. Nobody else is in my position. So I think that that's crazy or ridiculous for somebody to come out and try to put themselves in my shoes when you're not in my shoes. Like, you're not me. Like, obviously I'm playing by different rules. In fact, they came and tested me 3 times in 7 days last week. They came on Monday, then they came on Friday, then they came on Sunday. And I feel like if that's not a blatant attempt to try to get me to miss another one, to try to further their case, to say that, like, oh, look, like, he's trying to cheat, like, he even missed 4 tests, you know what I'm saying? Like, then I don't know what is. I don't think any of those people who were saying those things have gotten tested 3 times in a week, let alone 3 times probably in a year. So of course it's easy for them to feel like the system is easy, like they believe in the system, and obviously it's just my fault. It's like, why would I cause this on purpose? Like, this is my career, this is my livelihood, like, this is what I love to do. Why would I cause this on purpose? And so I'm not gonna say anything negative about those people. I mean, that's their opinion. I just have a different one. But I think that a lot of people do have my back. A lot of people do feel the same way that I do. Um, and it's like, what can you do?
Do you remember how many times you were tested at the end of last year, say post Doha all the way to December, well, even to December 31st after the issue on December 9th? Do you remember how often you were tested?
You saying from like at the beginning of this year to now, how many times?
No, I'm asking in 2019, basically in the window from after the World Championships to the beginning
Hmm.
of 2020, when a third miss would have triggered the suspension. Do you remember
Hmm.
how many times did they come and test you?
I'm not sure on a number amount, but it was pretty often. I mean, what was that like from October to December?
Hmm. Yeah.
2 months. It was probably like 4 or 5 times. I mean, they typically come like every week or every 2 weeks. Um, so I'm not sure on the number amount. And sometimes it's the AIU or IAAF, and sometimes it's USADA. I only
Mhm.
have the USADA app, and so on the USADA app, I can go back and look at the number of times. I don't have a app or login for the IAAF to go in and look at those tests. So I have every time the USADA comes to test me. I'm not sure on how many times is the other guys. I can't go back and look at it. But they
Mhm.
typically come like every other week, and so I would say probably 4 or 5 times.
And how often are those tests coming in the specified window? Because we know that they can come anytime to test you.
Mm-hmm. Probably every other time. Like sometimes
Okay.
they'll come during practice, or they'll just come like um just random. Really, they'll just come at a random time, and if I just so happen to be home, I'll answer the door, or if not, they'll call me, and if my whereabouts say that I'm in the city, then obviously Lexington is not that big, so I'll just come back to the crib, take the test, and go on about my day. So I would probably say it's probably every other time.
One of the things you hinted at was, that seemingly that you're higher profile. I mean, you're arguably the highest profile name in track and field, and you're being tested and looked at with a higher level of scrutiny. But don't you do you agree that that's appropriate for someone of your caliber? I mean, it kind of makes sense that you would be tested at a higher frequency and more would be expected of you simply for the fact that you're the best in the highest profile event in track and field. Do you see that and agree with that and kind of
Mhm.
understand the responsibility of that?
Absolutely. I definitely do. I think that, once you keep elevating in whatever you do, it's more responsibility. It's more that's expected of you. And so I mean that's why I said, I mean, like, I feel like you guys expect it to be simple, and so do I. Like, just call me, I'll take a test every day. I don't care. Like, to prove I'm not doing nothing like wrong. Like, I'll take a test literally every single day the rest of my career. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I mean, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't take any supplements. I don't take any drugs. I don't take anything. So if y'all want me to pee in the cup every day, I'll do that. But I feel like that's not what they're looking to do. I feel like they were just looking to try to purposely try to get me to miss the test, to cause this, and I feel like it to try to like justify that like they're doing their job, because like obviously the IAAF pays them, and so it kind of like if they're stirring up trouble with one of the biggest names in the sport, it's like, look, like, we're doing our job, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what I feel like they were trying to get at, and I feel like that's um I don't know. I don't know. It's just so crazy, man. It's just those are just my thoughts. But I agree with you. I mean, somebody who is a world champion obviously is gonna get tested, more frequently, especially in the 100 meter, knowing the history of some other guys, and so yeah, obviously it's more responsibility.
I know you mentioned in your post, and we've touched on this a bit here, but the kind of that you thought this was a deliberate attempt, a kind of got you moment to try to get you to possibly miss a test. why specifically do you feel that way? Other than the fact, is it just the fact that you didn't receive a phone call? Is it the fact that the address information is incorrect, and it seems like they didn't maybe go through the full level of things that they could do to contact you? I mean,
Mhm.
what specifically are you thinking that shows you that this may be a purposeful, a deliberate attempt to have a mistest on your record?
Um, for me, I think mainly just the simple fact that like I thought the point of the organization was to try to catch cheaters and to test the athletes, like go through what you have to be able to test them. So if I was looking for one of you guys and I showed up at your crib and you didn't answer the door and I have something important to do with you, I'm probably gonna call you. Like, that's just probably what I would do. Um, but for them to say that the client told them like to not contact me, um, I just feel like that goes against the purpose of the organization, in my opinion. Um, and so that's just how I look at it. If y'all wanted to test me, you could have. Because if you had called me, literally the mall is 5 minutes from my crib. If I was at the mall when you came, like, um, I was back within the hour. So it's just like I don't even know if he was at the right place. I don't know. It's just a lot of like things that are just like it's a lot of things that are uncertain, and it just seems like very fishy. But for them to say that like do not contact him, for me that just seems very purposeful.
How how hard are you willing to fight this? Because ultimately it comes down to a pragmatic decision. And as you mentioned, if it is just a 1 year suspension, you'd be back in time for the Olympic trials. The season this year obviously has been dramatically altered because of the pandemic. So what
Mm.
how far do you intend to push this versus figuring out a way, the fastest way possible, to get back on the track, and how much are you weighing your own reputation within all that?
I mean, honestly, I feel like it's kind of a sliding scale. To be honest with you, like obviously, I want to fight it, and I don't want to have any sort of suspension on my record, on my name, on my reputation. But at the same time, the most important thing is for me to be able to compete. At the end of the day, I feel like 10 years from now, like yeah, a few people might be talking about this, but like what's most important to me is for me to have that opportunity to go out there and try to accomplish something that I worked literally my whole life for. Um, and so whatever I have to do to be able to compete at the Olympics, that's what I want to do. Whatever I have to do to have that opportunity, um, that's what I'm down for. So obviously I want to fight it and try to clear my name. Some people feel the way that they feel, regardless of what I say or do. So I can't even like go too hard about that. Some people like mine is just already set on, their way of thinking. So I don't want to even like get deep into it or like fight with those people because obviously they just feel the way that they do. And so what's most important to me is at the end of the day if I'm able to compete at the Olympics. And so that's really the main focus.
So it sounds like you'd be willing to take a year, but obviously then 2 years, practically speaking, would be something that would be off the table because of the fact that it would mean there would be no Olympics for you, and Olympics don't come along very often.
I'm not sure. Like I don't even know what the next steps are or
Mhm.
what the next protocol is or anything or like how do we go about the appeal. I'm kind of just listening to my agent and the lawyer and he's dealt with certain cases before. And so we'll go through the proper channels, try to appeal it and try to come out victorious. Um, Obviously, worst case scenario, it'll be a 2 year suspension, and that would just be heartbreaking, man. I mean, I don't know, but hopefully it doesn't come down to that. Because like
Mhm.
I said, I mean, I feel like you said, I mean, the Olympics doesn't come around that often. I feel like I have a good opportunity to go there and compete and bring home a medal. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, man. And hopefully I get that chance.
One
Were
other
you
thing I
planning
wanted
on
to.
racing
Oh,
this
go ahead.
year? I was just wondering, were you planning on racing this year?
I was planning on it if it was gonna be safe, like if the
Mhm.
higher ups and different governments said that it would be safe to travel overseas and be around a group of people and be in that type of environment, then possibly. But if it was unsure and they said that it was any sort of risk, then probably not. I was probably just planning on doing like maybe a few like time trials, um, just with my coach, and then just wrapping it up and getting ready for next year. Starting that fall training, and then just getting back into it for next year. So I guess it was like 50-50. So if I don't compete, I won't necessarily be losing anything, just because it was unsure if I was going to anyways. Um, so that was I don't know. I think everything was just kind of like depending on how the next couple months goes with the coronavirus.
And I'm just wondering, like, what's been the hardest part about this for you? Is it the threat of not competing? Is it the damage to your reputation? Is it just knowing this is there the whole time and it's kind of like reliving a nightmare dating back to last summer? Like, what is the hardest part for you of this entire situation?
I think all of the above, man. I think sometimes people get online and like talk about me and like it's like dehumanizing. Like I'm like this figure and it's like this is not my life. Like this is not my career. Like I'm not the same guy who they, saw me like work and progress. Like I feel like you guys like watch me progress and get better and better and then reach a certain level in my career. It's just like I'm that same person, but certain people like get online and they just see me on TV and they just like just talk about me like I'm not even like some person like, oh, he's got to be some cheater and stuff like that. And it's like I can take it, but for certain people to say those things and for my mom to see that, my dad, and it's like they not celebrities. They not used to like, people, looking at them and stuff like that. So my grandmother sees this and that's the most disheartening part because they know me. They know my heart. They with me every day, and they know what the truth is, what the situation is, and so it hurts them. And whenever they hurt, it hurts me. And so I feel like knowing that, the fact that like this is my career, and like I feel like these people are playing games, possibility I can be suspended, and just the mere fact of having this dark cloud over me this whole time, like it's depressing, man. Like knowing that like I'm going back and forth with these people. I know the truth. I know I'm one of the, if not the cleanest athlete in the sport. I don't take any drug, I don't take any performance enhancing. I don't take any supplements, legal or illegal. So I'm like, I know for a fact I'm the cleanest athlete in the sport, but yet like these people are like investigating me and we're going back and forth and it's, I don't know, man, just all of the above. I just think that it's just like I just wish that I didn't have to deal with this. I just wish I didn't have to deal with this because I want this, like everything that people are saying, like I want that. I want the sport to be as popular as possible. I feel like it should be one of the biggest sports in the world. I feel like I want it to be as clean as possible. I want cheaters to be out the sport. I want people who are not cheaters to be able to compete and know that it's a level playing field. I want more money to be in the sport so that more people have an opportunity to make a lot of money. Like I want the sport to be as big and the best that it can be. Um, and I'm not an enemy of the sport. I'm not an enemy of the AIU or the USADA or any organization. So the whole thing is just disheartening that I even have to like deal with it, man. I was talking about it with my parents. It's just one of the situations where it's just so messed up that all you can do is really just laugh because like what can I do? What can I do? And so the whole thing is just disheartening, and I don't know. I can't specifically say like one thing that mainly concerns me.
Yeah. Well, Christian, we do thank you for providing your time. I know this has been a really stressful situation for you, so thanks for giving us uh, some comment here today, and we wish you the best going forward.
Absolutely, I thank you guys. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yep. Of course. All right. So that
All
was
right.
Christian Coleman talking about. Sorry, there, Kevin. That was Christian Coleman talking about his suspension. It is interesting, Kevin. A lot of it seems to hinge on this phone call thing, and AIU now is saying, we're under no obligation to call, and he's saying, well, I've been called every other time before. Do you think it's a case where Coleman just needs to know the rules a little bit better, or it's tough? It's definitely in that gray area.
Well, we see this with every level of track and field, right? And the minute details within the rules make a big difference. But also, if he's been tested a bunch of times and the tests have been conducted in the same way every single time, i.e., what he's saying about the phone calls, then you'd expect that to continue, right? Like you would, if you're right, if you are going about your day and you have a responsibility to your job, and every single time that job responsibility is executed in one specific way, you'd expect it to continue that exact same way. You would not expect all of a sudden it to be different. So I do see that. I do see that as an issue. Now, as you mentioned, the higher responsibility with someone like him, not just in terms of the volume of the tests, because we know targeted testing exists, right? That's a thing. But he's the fastest man in the world. That is a prestigious title that he wears. So with that does come this extra responsibility to make sure you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. I think, like, big picture, holistically, what needs to be looked at, and not just in this case, but in this entire system, is like what's feasible, what's acceptable, and what's reasonable to ask of athletes. And when we get more information on this case, although he was forthcoming with us about what was provided and what wasn't provided, maybe we'll get a little bit more insight there. But it's a tough situation. I mean, it's a tough spot for the sport to be in at this point, with the fastest man in the world in this position.
My thing, and I regret not asking, why not just be home during the window 100%? I understand that they can catch you at 8:01 or 7:16 or 7:15 all the way to 8:15. So maybe you're thinking, well, I mean, it only takes 3 minutes to test. Why not be there I don't need to be there at 7:15. I can but why not just, maybe he answered this and I didn't see it. Why not just be there that whole hour? Don't go to the mall in that situation. And perhaps it's, well, I've never had an issue with this before. And so,
well, I did ask him, I said, well, he did. I asked, hey, did you think you were taking a risk? He said, no, I didn't see it as a risk. I'll go out, I'll get this stuff done. I'll be back in time. I think what this ultimately hinges on is it doesn't hinge on the call, because they're saying we have no obligation to call you, and that's written down in the rules. I think what it hinges on was he actually back within the hour?
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why they were asking for information. I don't know if video footage, of security camera tape of him being in his house. I will say this, though, from a competitive standpoint, right? Putting aside the bigger questions about this case, and obviously aside from how people will perceive him, if this ends up just being, we've seen 1-year suspensions for this before. He says he accepted the suspension about a month ago. If it goes from 1 year to May, and he's back in time for the Olympics, the competitive side of this is not altered very much. No. Because if you're going to miss a season,
he can't run world. He can't defend his indoor title. He wouldn't be able to defend his world indoor title.
Good point. Yes. And he won't be able to make money, which is not a small thing. And I'm not taking that away from him. And again, I'm not disputing what this has to do with your reputation. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of these big outdoor world championships, Olympics, where people make their name and their legacies are crafted. If he's back in time for that, like you and I were both in Doha. This was talked about a whole bunch in the lead up to Doha and in the mix zone in Doha.
Until Salazar's thing. But yeah.
Well, true. And yes, he wins the gold medal in the 100, right? And he appears again later in the 400. So, the 4x100.
Yeah.
That would have been a story if he appeared in the 400. He comes back later in the 4x100, and it's almost not a story anymore. And then it's certainly not a story a month later or 2 months later. Indoors, he comes out, runs really fast time. That's not the story. So I wonder if it's a 1-year suspension, if we're going to be talking after the Olympics next, and he goes and he wins a gold medal, if he's able to put that behind him in that regard.
It's interesting because it seems like, last time he was critical, and maybe again, and you have your right to be critical of who you perceive as being unfair to you. Last time he was much more skeptical in its early days of this, but of the media and the media's perception. This time he's obviously targeting specifically the testing. Well,
because last time the media, and he, and to his in his defense, that was leaked before it was adjudicated, and it turns out there was an error. Now you can say it was a technicality and it was off by 1 day, and that's the other tough spot here. If you're going to take the sympathetic angle toward Coleman, is that other stuff he was cleared for. Theoretically, we should not prejudge that, right? This is just 3 violations, because the other one was a backdated filing failure that did not lead to a suspension. He sat out meets, and he should not have, per the rules. And I get it if you're saying, well, we know it was a technicality, but hey, if you're expecting him to be a stickler for the rules, you have to expect that of the bodies that are enforcing the rules too. It's fair on both sides, right? So, this is his second time being suspended. Well, that's not an accurate characterization, because because the other 2 were previous. So he's getting hit with this on both sides, which is tough because then it's a second round of stories. If this was just the first story and he comes out with this evidence and say, hey, this is when it happened, and even if he says what he says, or even if he just says, hey, I screwed up, I'll sit out a year, I think the impact is lessened. But because of this is the second go round of this story, and again, that's a lot of that was on how that news was reported. It's going to hit even harder this time around.
Yeah, and a little away from what you were saying, but I am curious about the wrong address thing. And of course, like you said, I'm not going to provide my address and say what was specifically wrong. Was it a unit number wrong? Was it the wrong building? I assume it was the right complex. I think that's been addressed. But that's a curious thing to me. And did the AIU, I assume they investigated it enough to say, no, we had the right address, or, you should have been there, or what the situation was? Because right now there's this lack of transparency. And I talked about in the Nasser case, I don't know why the AIU, they don't even really release a press release in regards to this. And I know they came out with a statement in Nasser's case specifically, but this is not clear at this moment that they banged on the right address, and then they didn't call to boot. And I know they say they're under no obligation to call, which is fine. But was the questions remaining are, was he back when he says he was back, and were they at the right address? Because if they're truly banging on the door every 10 minutes for an hour on his apartment, he should have heard it at some point, right? It's not a light knock. It's not a doorbell. I know he got that ring installed, but it sounds like they were pounding on it like they were the feds. This shouldn't have been an issue, and that's why I'm confused. Unless unless you take the really cynical approach and say, well, he was trying to evade testing. I know he's saying otherwise, but I guess if you wanted to, you could believe it that way. I don't understand how that's what, and he's mentioning like, oh, we hear an email every 2 months. It does seem that there's a certain lack of transparency that kind of lends credibility to the idea that it is kind of almost like a gotcha situation. Now we're hearing Coleman's side. I understand that, but I want to hear the athletics integrity unit side. And I know that they're a testing body and that they're under no obligation, I suppose. But it would be nice to be like, no, we determined through whatever and whatever that we were at the correct address. The officer wrote down the incorrect address. I'm so confused. And of course, we're taking Coleman's words that it's the wrong address. But I assume that would be a weird thing to bring up if it wasn't accurate. It's just a lot of questions, and it feels like he doesn't have any more answers than we do. And it's like, shouldn't they tell him like, no, we had the right address. Here's the picture that our unit or our DCO took of your door with your unit number on it. And it's like, we don't have that. And he didn't even know any of that. And maybe that's on Coleman. Maybe they wrote it in the fine print. There's just still so many questions here. And this is a pretty big deal for there to be that, very specific and important questions still left hanging.
Yeah. I mean, they go back and they investigate the stuff, and they were interested enough to know. I mean, according to Coleman,
his Chipotle receipts,
well, and calling the head of Chipotle to try to figure out when he was there. But one question I would have for them is why does it matter? And this is to the testing body. If he wasn't there, why does it matter where he was? If you're not going to exonerate him for being at Chipotle and nearby, is it just to figure out
get all your facts straight? I don't.
Yeah, if what he said was true, okay, I was at Chipotle 5 minutes away. Well, prove it. Okay, well there you are. We have evidence now that you're at this Chipotle 5 minutes away, but you should have been in your house, right? Like that. I don't know why. If they're being very strict with this, of we're not going to call you. You need to be in your exact location during that hour. We're going to knock once every 10 minutes, and then we're going to move on. Why does it matter if he was somewhere else, and if that's a legitimate I mean, it seems like the only thing here that would provide clarity was if there is video evidence of him being in his residence during that hour, right?
You would have thought. I mean, this is neither here nor there, but you would have thought a residence would have some cameras, but maybe they don't, and that's fine. That's not his fault or the AIU's fault. But I guess the one thing on the opposite side, looking in on Coleman, is okay, you're out and you're close to home, and that's fine. All the time I'll go out for a walk and knowing I need to be back by 8 p.m. for something. And I'm just like, well, I'm just 5 minutes away. It's not gonna be a problem. Stranger things have happened though. It's still a risk. I know he said it wasn't, but it's still a risk. I mean, you could get in a car accident and then you're not back during your thing. Something could happen at the mall. Yeah. It is a risk. And I'm wondering if that's kind of what AIU is looking at and saying, you got to be home during your window. And so maybe we don't think that's, maybe I don't think that's fair, because he was right there and they'd called him all the time before and doesn't even know if he has the right address. But still, if it was me, and let me just say this, obviously I've never been in this position, so I don't have anywhere near the knowledge or anything. But I would think if I was at this level, I would say, nope, I cannot hang out with my girlfriend. I cannot hang out with my family. I am home from 7:15 to 8:15, and then the rest of my life continues after that. That's the only thing I would say to him, but he didn't view it that way, and it sure does look like some bad luck on his part if that's the way it was. If he was back in that time and that has somehow the DCO and Coleman just missed paths.
Yeah, this is I mean, it's like it's a puzzle. You can look at it however you want to look at it, right? You can look at it from, and this is probably frustrating on both sides. You can look at it as the most sinister explanation, or you can look at it as an innocuous situation, right? You can look at it as he was already out Christmas shopping and lost track of time, or he got back within the hour, as he's saying he did. So he was compliant in that regard. Or you could look at it as the rule is written, right? The whole idea is someone could evade testing. So if they're not there during their window, they're not able to test. You could look at it, the same set of facts, and the same set of information that we know, and go to both conclusions. And I don't know, what I've learned from covering track and field for about 10 years now is just to wait till we get more information to see the outcome. Again, I appreciate him coming on and answering all the questions that we put towards him. I'm sure he's going to answer other questions later that will provide more clarity, but I'm willing to wait, learn more about the process, and then see what's decided.
Yep.
It is. Yeah, I'll leave it there. That's all I got. I'll leave it there. We'll talk about it more tomorrow or the next day. I'm sure more to come.
Yeah.
That's it for today's episode, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. I know you're going to email because I know at least half of you now are mad at Lincoln and the other half are mad at me, or maybe 100% on both of us. I'm not sure, but you can email in FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Thank you to Alon for producing. We will see you guys next time.